Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Ella and welcome. On my channel we talk about missing people, murders, and just creepy things. So if you're interested in that stuff, please press the subscribe button, please press the like button, and please turn on the post notifications so that you can be notified every time I post a video. And yeah, today we're going to be talking about the Lauren Agee case, which is very interesting. It's actually probably one of my favorite cases I've covered on my channel so far. If you guys want to find out what happened to Lauren Agee, keep watching and let's get started. Lauren Agee was 21 years old and born on August 19th, 1993 to her parents Sherry and Brian Agee in Biloxi, Mississippi. Lauren had 3 siblings, Allison, Jordan, and Joshua, and she was pretty close to all of her family. Later on in her life, her parents got divorced and she moved to Hendersonville, Tennessee with her mom and her stepdad, Michael Smith. She was described by all her friends and family as really outgoing and bubbly. She had a lot of friends. She was just an average 21-year-old girl. She had just received a scholarship at Bethel University for dance, which is one of her big passions in life, but she actually didn't accept it and she decided to study criminal justice instead. So like I said, she had a lot of friends. She had a boyfriend that everyone around her said seemed like the one. It seemed like the person she was gonna marry. And she just had a lot of good things going for her and she had a lot of good people in her life. In July of 2015, Lauren told her mom that she would be attending something called Wake Fest. It was a wakeboarding and water sports festival held on Center Hill Lake in Smithville, Tennessee. So basically they would go there, they'd do water sports in the lake all day, and then they'd get drunk at night and they would just party. She told her mom she would be going with her friend Hannah Palmer. So Lauren's mom Sherry had a lot of worries and concerns about Lauren going to this event. She knew it was known for the excessive drinking and partying. Her mom also didn't think Hannah Palmer was the best friend for her. She thought she was irresponsible and kind of used Lauren as a friend only when she wanted to and when it benefited her. Her mom didn't think this was a safe place for her to be going, especially with this friend. Sherry told Lauren this, but she was 21, she could make her own decisions and she didn't have to listen to her mom. So despite her mom's concerns, she decided to go anyway. So Lauren and Hannah rented a cabin along the lake and that's where they planned to stay. And they drove to Smithville on Friday, July 25th, and they planned to return on Sunday, July 27th. Everyone who knew Lauren said she seemed really excited for this event. Her and Hannah were posting on social media on the way there. They seemed really excited and like this was going to be a really fun weekend for the both of them. When they got to the lake, they met up with Hannah's boyfriend, Aaron Lilly, and his friend, Christopher Stout. Once they met up with the boys, the plans for where they were going to be sleeping changed. They wanted to camp on a cliff near the lake instead of in the cabins, and Lauren and Hannah decided they would do this instead too. One of Lauren's other friends said that Lauren didn't know that Aaron and Chris would be there that day and she thought it would just be Hannah and her having, you know, a girls' weekend alone. But when they got there, the boys were there, and Lauren's other friend said that she didn't seem very happy about it, especially since she had a boyfriend. But it's also possible that Lauren had lied about not knowing that the boys were coming just so that her mom and her boyfriend wouldn't be mad. Regardless of what she knew and what she didn't know, she didn't seem prepared to be camping where they were camping. She only had a few basic items with her, like her phone, her charger, and some flip-flops. She thought they were going to be staying in a cabin, so she was not prepared to be sleeping on a cliff. So the cliff they were going to be sleeping on had a 90-foot drop on one side and a 45-foot drop on the other. The only way they could get to the top of this cliff was to take a canoe across the lake and climb a rope up to the cliff. So once they got up there, they decided on the sleeping arrangements, and it was Hannah and Aaron in the tent and Lauren and Chris on a hammock. And her friend also says she wasn't happy about this, obviously because she had a boyfriend and she was going to be now sleeping like next to this other guy. Again though, we have no way of knowing what her real intentions were, and we have no way of knowing how she really felt besides what her friend claims that she told her. So once they got up this cliff, they kind of set up their camp and they were ready to go back towards the marina to party with everyone and get drunk. That's what this festival was known for, and that's what they went there to do. So they were ready to go meet up with everyone else, and the only way to get down from this cliff was either to climb down the rope that they had climbed up or to jump. So everyone agreed to jump, but there were a lot of rocks in the water that you had to avoid, and obviously the big ones that were up out of the water you would stay away from, but there were some rocks under the water that you couldn't see. There were like waves crashing over them, or they were just lower, so they had to be really careful not to hit them. And when Lauren jumped off of this cliff, she actually hit the back of her head on one of the rocks that was more hidden. Hannah, Aaron, and Chris said that she seemed a little out of it, but that she recovered quickly. She maybe didn't know where she was for a second, but then she seemed back to normal. She probably had a bit of a concussion. She just kept going on with the night. She kept drinking, which is not good when you have a head injury. And no one stopped her because this was a bunch of young kids, really. They were only 21, and they were just at this festival where everyone went there to get drunk, and there wasn't really any supervision from anyone older. So it was a pretty dangerous situation. Basically, all the concerns that her mother Sherry had were coming true. So even though Lauren hit her head, everyone else who saw her that night said she seemed to be in good spirits and having a good time, and she seemed normal. So at some point between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., this group decided to go back up to the cliff and go to bed at their campsite. Some other people who were with them that night say that at this point Lauren was having a lot of second thoughts about sleeping up there. She even asked someone else if they could stay in their cabin, but they said it was full, so she really had no choice but to go back with Hannah and Aaron and Chris up the cliff and to sleep up there. I think the group knew how dangerous it was really going to be to get back up the cliff when they were going that night, because there's also a video out there of them in canoes saying we're going to the death trap. It seemed like they knew it was dangerous to climb back up the rope, how drunk they were, especially with all the rocks. Like if you fell, that could end your life. Despite how drunk they were, somehow they all made it back up the cliff safely, and Chris says that he took this picture with Lauren once they got back up there, but this is a little suspicious because it seems like it's light out in this picture, and this should have been between midnight and 2 a.m, so it should have been dark. So the authorities kind of questioned if this picture was actually taken then. At this point, the group went to sleep, and everyone just thought they were all out for the night, and no one saw them until the next day. So the next day, which was July 26th, at around 4:45 p.m, two fishermen were on the lake and they saw something floating, so they went to go check it out, and they discovered it was a body of a woman, and she appeared to be dead. So obviously they call the police, and the police get there and they're starting to get her out of the water when Chris and Aaron come around the corner in a canoe. They asked the police if they found their friend, and the police said, yeah, she's right here, but she's dead. So one theory that the police had was that they already knew she was dead, and that they were going to purposely run into the police or whoever found her so that they could, you know, set up a story and claim that they didn't know where she was and that they were looking for her. Her body was found on the opposite side of where she would have fallen off the cliff or jumped. So if they were really looking for her, it means they would have gone in their canoe and went the opposite way of where she logically would have fallen off. So that was a little suspicious. And obviously these two were questioned by the officers. The officers described them to be as uneasy and nervous, and this could be because they knew something that they weren't telling, or just because they weren't used to talking to police officers and that they were just nervous because of that. So what was concerning to the police was that Lauren was staying with Hannah, Chris, and Aaron, and she hadn't been reported missing until she was found dead, which was 14 hours since they last saw her. And these three didn't seem too concerned that she was missing. They could have thought maybe she just left, but all of her things were still left behind on the cliff, and it's like they were staying on a cliff. Like, where would she have gone unless she just climbed down by herself? But why would she have left everything there? And it's also suspicious because she was gone all day. It'd be one thing if her body was found at 10 a.m, but her body was found at 4:45 p.m. Like, she had been gone all day, and they didn't think to call the police. They didn't really look for her until the police found them at the same time. And especially since all her stuff was there, it was really weird that they didn't think anything was wrong. All three of them were taken in for questioning by the police because they were obviously suspicious, and all three of their stories actually varied slightly. So Aaron was questioned first. He said that Lauren never made it back with them that night to the camp. So even though all her things were there, he was claiming that Lauren never came back there that night, and she was never there, and the three of them just went to sleep without her, and they left her with everyone else that night. So Hannah claimed that Lauren had left early in the morning to go hang out with some other people in a boat, and that's why all her stuff was there. She said she'd be back, and she thought she'd be back later that day, and that's why she didn't call the police or anything. And then Chris, who was the one sleeping with her on the hammock, said she must have gotten up at some point in the middle of the night, but he never felt the hammock move, so that's why he didn't didn't get up and follow her or anything, and he just thought she had gotten up to go hang out with other people too, but he said she had done it at some point in the middle of the night. Another thing that was suspicious is that if she had really fallen off the cliff that night, which was what people were starting to think, it's weird that the group didn't hear anything, like a scream or a splash. And you know, this could be because they were all super drunk, but it could also mean that the other three were involved in killing her somehow, and that it wasn't an accident. So regardless of what was true from any of their stories, all three of them claimed that when they woke up in the morning, she just wasn't there. They thought that she would be back later, and that's why they didn't call the police. They thought she was just hanging out with other people and nothing had happened. So the police say as they were being interviewed, they all seemed extremely nervous and they were all whispering among each other. They even heard Aaron say, "Don't mention anything, I'll do the talking," to the other two. So obviously this was like crazy suspicious. All the facts at this point just seemed to point to those three. So while they were being interviewed and questioned, Lauren's body was examined. She had many injuries, including blunt force trauma, broken fingers, a broken nose, and bruises on her back and legs, most likely from hitting rocks and things as she fell, because this is what they were thinking at this point, is that she fell from the cliff. The weird thing is she didn't have any water in her lungs, which would be expected if she had fallen off the cliff while she was still alive and breathing. So that was another weird thing. So despite all of this like evidence against her friends, her death was ruled an accident, and Aaron, Chris, and Hannah were set free. They were free to go. They didn't have to stay with the police, and none of them were questioned further or investigated at all. The police concluded that she had gotten up in the middle of the night, probably to use the bathroom or something, and since she was so drunk, she was stumbling around and just fell off the cliff. When Lauren's mom, Sherry, finds out that Lauren's dead, she immediately wants to talk to her friends that she was with that night, and when she finds out that they've all been released without further questioning, she is super concerned. When she hears that all of their stories had so many inconsistencies, she demands a re-examination but is denied. So at this point, an ex of Aaron's comes forward and says that he was abusive when they were in their relationship and actually has pictures of proof, and I believe he was arrested for domestic violence after this. I don't know if he was arrested at this point or if he had been previously arrested for domestic violence, but he had a criminal record, and so did Chris. Chris had 3 DUIs and had also been caught fleeing the scene of an accident previously. So regardless of the criminal records, regardless of the inconsistencies, the police still say her death was an accident and that these 3 had nothing to do with it. They were just her innocent friends who were there that night. So after Lauren's death, Aaron, Chris, and Hannah just continue on with normal life. I believe Hannah and Aaron actually got married, but I know they moved away together to Florida, and yeah, they pretty much all just continued on with normal life, and they didn't seem too bothered by her death. But her mom, Sherry, obviously wanted more answers, so she asked Hannah to do a Skype call with her to just ask her some questions about what happened that night and try to get more details. So on this call, Hannah changed her story from what she originally had told the police, which was that Lauren went to hang out with another group of people in the morning. So what she told Sherry on this Skype call was basically what the police had ruled her death to be. She just said Lauren got up to use the bathroom, and since she was drunk, she stumbled and fell off the cliff. Sherry also says that during the Skype call, Hannah's phone rang and she answered, and she could hear Aaron on the phone saying, "Stick to the story." Of course, there's no way to really prove this, but I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened, because it seems like these 3 were definitely hiding something, and it seemed like Aaron was the leader of it. It seemed like he had a very specific story he wanted the other 2 to follow, and he didn't want them to change any details. So Sherry just 100% didn't believe that the 3 friends had nothing to do with it. So she actually hired a private investigator after being denied the re-examination by the local police. And the private investigator did a re-examination of Lauren's autopsy and found that there could be signs of choking shortly before her death. If she had fallen from the side with the 45-foot drop, it was unlikely that she even would have ended up in the water. Where Lauren's body was found was in a little cove kind of off the main part of the lake and the river, and the private investigator did a research study. They found out that if she had fallen from the side with the 90-foot drop, the current of the river would not have even been strong enough to move her body to this place. So for it to get there, it seemed like someone would have had to move it or placed it there. There was also a triangle-shaped, like, imprint on Lauren's chest, and this triangle matched up to the one on the canoe that Aaron and Chris had. So this made it possible that they had her in their canoe hours after her death. The local police were claiming that this mark was from their own rescue boat from when they took her out of the water to the mainland, but the private investigators looked at both the canoe and the rescue boat and said that where these triangle shaped things were on the boat, the angle on the rescue boat's one wouldn't have left that mark on Lauren. So they pretty much said this had to be from the canoe or someone else's canoe, but they said it is not from the rescue boat. But that is what the local police still claimed. Sherry filed a wrongful death suit because she felt that her daughter's case was not looked at well enough, and the police just wanted to say it was an accident when Sherry really didn't think so. And a lot of the evidence that the private investigator had found really didn't seem to lead to an accident, but the wrongful death suit was later dropped. Shortly after this, a new witness came forward, and he said he was staying on the lake that same weekend with his family. He said shortly after midnight he saw a man swimming towards a dock in the marina. He said he climbed up onto the dock and he seemed in complete distress, and he was saying that he almost drowned on his way there. The witness said he now recognized this man as Aaron Lilly, which means he wasn't back at the campsite like their original story had said. Even if they had went to the campsite a little after this, he shouldn't have been swimming. He would have been with all of the people partying. But even with this new witness, the local police still claimed that it was still an accident and that they had nothing to do with it. So that's the whole story, and now we're gonna get into some theories. So the first theory is that Lauren actually did make it back to the campsite that night with the rest of the group, but once they got there, something happened and they threw her off the cliff or put her in that cove that she was found in to make it look like an accident so that they wouldn't look like they were involved, even though it might have been an accident. Probably because of their criminal records, they thought they were going to be really suspicious or looked at or accused of murder. One specific theory for this, since she was sleeping in the hammock with Chris, and she had her boyfriend and didn't have any romantic interest in Chris, maybe he tried something with her and, they started fighting since they were so drunk. Maybe he got carried away and she accidentally got killed. So at that point, he would have woken up the other two and they would have framed it as an accident. Really, she could have been in a fight with any of the three group members and accidentally been killed or even pushed off, and then at that point they would have covered it up. To me, this sounds really likely, especially since Aaron has domestic abuse charges. This seems like the most reasonable argument to me. And this group she was with, they just didn't seem like reliable people. They didn't seem like the type of people you would want to go to something like this with. So the other theory is that it was an accident. Maybe she did get up in the middle of the night and was going to use the bathroom or something and she fell off because she was so drunk. Even though the private investigator did some research against this theory, it's still possible maybe the current was different at that time. I don't know how we could explain the triangle thing unless it really was from the rescue boat, but it seems weird that the three friends are acting so suspicious and that the local police are just deeming it an accident. And it's also possible that the group was just acting weird because they had previous criminal records. They knew that they might be suspicious even though they didn't have anything to do with her death. So that could be why Aaron was saying, stick to the story, don't change anything. Maybe they didn't want to give the police a reason to look at them as suspects. I don't know how this could explain the inconsistencies in their stories though. I don't know why Aaron would have said she didn't make it back to the campsite with them when everyone at that party saw her leave with them. So I think his story is definitely a lie. I think maybe Hannah's and Chris's are just guesses of what happened to her, and then once the police kind of figured out their own reasoning and story, they switched over to that story to just seem more believable. But a lot of people also suspect the local police as being involved somehow or having a reason to cover up for the three other friends. It's possible one of them had a connection with the police or had a parent that had a connection with the police, but there's really no way to tell. But to this day, her case has still not been reopened or re-examined. The local police still say it was an accident and that the other three weren't involved. So yeah, that was a very complicated case with a lot of different theories. Basically, from the time they leave the party with everyone else, it's unclear unclear what happened to Lauren. At any point, she could have been in a fight with one of the friends or just fallen or gotten hurt. So yeah, there's a lot of missing details. There's a lot of space for assumption. There's really no way we'll ever be able to tell what happened to Lauren. So that is it for this case. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like, please subscribe, and please turn on post notifications. And let me know in the comments if you did like this case. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!